Welcome back to Not a Straight Line with me, Pete Daly-Dickson. This is the show that explores the non-linear journeys of artists and entrepreneurs to inspire you as you zigzag through your own non-straight line life. And this week, I'm joined by the Jean Valjean himself, Ian McIntosh. And I introduce him that way because Ian's journey has been entirely filled with theatrical opportunities, from humble beginnings in Coventry to the heights of showbiz success in London's West End. This success belies Ian's turbulent, non-straight line journey, though, from abandoning an electrical apprenticeship for a full scholarship to Performing Arts College, to the surprise of beautiful twin daughters at age 21, with many more twists and turns on the way. Ian has worked hard to hone his success and recently found a spiritual awakening which has helped to unpack the traumas of his past. We hear about these in this conversation and how they have helped to create the legendary West End star and well-rounded human that he is today. Enjoy the conversation. So we'll just do a brief physiological sigh to start off. So the three of us, you, me and the listener, will just close our eyes, and the physiological sigh is 2 breaths in through the nose, held for a second, and then breathe out through the mouth. So we just do that 3 times. So breathe in. And again. Ian McIntosh, welcome to the Not a Straight Line podcast. It's a joy to have you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I'm all at peace now.
Yeah, you look really at peace. You still had your eyes closed. I kind of didn't want to start speaking. I didn't want to wake you up.
Well, it was kind of, I was thinking to myself, we'll go straight in with it. I was thinking to myself, I've spent so long sort of being a character and an actor that I don't do too many of these podcasts where I'm not promoting something. And and I was thinking, oh, this is quite nerve-wracking. I felt a little bit of nerves that I'm going to share a bit of my life story, you know what I mean, with you and the listener.
Yeah. And I think that's why that exercise, and just before we hit record, I told you about a lady that I had a conversation with for the podcast that found her dad dead at 4 years old. And she was actually really, really nervous about coming on the podcast because she'd never done one before. And we just were doing a bit of chit chat and stuff. And I had heard about this physiological sigh a little while earlier. And it just came to me, like, well, why don't we just do it, just to kind of, regulate ourselves and calm ourselves down. And I thought, this is really great. And I think some part of me thinks that I do it as much for me as I do for my guest, because it kind of just settles you. So that's great. So Ian, just for the sake of the listener, orient us geographically. Where are you in the world?
Right, so I'm down in London, where I'm living at the moment. So where I'm working at the moment. So I'm actually in Leighton Buzzard. Actually, I'm north of London, Bedfordshire, but working in London. And but I'm from Coventry originally, Tile Hill in Coventry.
And I'm sure that will, listener, just in case you don't know, I live in Coventry and I'm in Coventry now, and that is part of the point of connection between Ian and myself. That I'm sure that will come out in the conversation as we go. The beginning of the conversation, once we get that little bit of regulation and geographical orientation out the way, me and my guest, we climb up to the highest diving board and we jump into the conversation with a question. So when you heard that question from me just a little while ago, Ian, you mentioned that a couple of times in your life, incidences in your life came to mind. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, well, I think like catalyst for change in your life. Do you know what I mean? Like one of them, was at the age of 28, which is one was at 21, funnily enough, and one was at 28. And it's interesting how, like, in my life, in the moment, you don't ever think of it, do you? You know what I mean? But when you look back in your life, you go, oh, and people say, oh, there's this, 7-year cycle that happens, and I don't know much about that kind of stuff, but it seems to have happened at the age of 21 for me. I had twin daughters actually at the age of 21, and they were not planned. They were not planned. I was working as an entertainer in a holiday park in Great Yarmouth, and was dating a lady who was a waitress, and we lived in the staff caravan park, and it was very kind of Dirty Dancing style, and yeah, and what happened there was, there was lots of complications. I won't go into the complications of it too much, but it was definitely because I don't think it's fair to out of respect for the kids and
Sure, of course.
girls and for their mum. But what it did do for me was, I could tell you, I was 21. I was, drinking like a 21-year-old. I was partying like a 21-year-old. I'd just done a tour of High School Musical, and my ego was high because I had this amazing first job, or well, not first, but it was a UK tour, and my ego was high, and I just got smacked with this dose of reality, basically, and looking back on that moment when around when the girls were born, because I worked away straight away. I was working away. I was working in Holland doing a musical tour of Hair the musical. I kind of, I was working at this holiday camp and I wasn't earning a lot of money, and I wasn't earning. I certainly wasn't, in my mind, old enough or able enough to be a dad, really. And that goes into other stuff. I didn't have a dad growing up. Well, I had a stepdad who thinking, but I didn't really know my real dad too much. There was lots of that kind of, where I'm from in Coventry is like well, it's a council estate. It's a council estate, housing estate. Yeah. So where I grew up, and we didn't really know my dad. I think that played into it as well. And so, anyway, the reason why I'm going into that is because I think it made it meant that I had to change. I had to earn money at least. You know what I mean? And I think I was probably coasting in my career, and I don't think I would have worked as hard to get to where I've got to had it have not been for the girls. So I'm grateful because my twin daughters, Bo and Piper, and they're 14 now, and I'm so 36, and yeah, I wouldn't have worked so hard. I mean, and that's come with lots of stuff over the 14 years. Lots of painful experiences, lots of brilliant experiences, harsh realizations, rude awakenings instead of spiritual awakenings.
Mm,
It's
mm, mm.
you know a good awakenings, all of that kind of stuff that comes with it. But looking back now over 14 years, there was a definite time. That was a time in my life where I had to change. And because there was a financial obligation, at least to if I wasn't going to be around because I was working away, then that I had to earn money, and that came with complications as well. That came with other kind of complications. But yeah, that was one moment of it. Yeah, and then I would say a second moment. I mean,
Well, before we go to the second moment,
yeah,
just from a story perspective, let's kind of leave the hanger with the listener knows that there's another big zag coming up at some point. Just go back to being brought up in Coventry. The point of connection, but again, for the sake of the listener, just so they know that I'm currently in a play that's being directed by a guy called Craig Shelton, and Craig used to teach Ian at school. That's right, isn't it?
yeah, that's correct. It was at the Woodland School. When the Woodland School, for those who know Coventry, the Woodland School was an all boys comprehensive school, and yeah, and we used to team up. He was a Mr. Shelton. I still call him Mr. Shelton.
Mr. Shelton, yeah.
Mr. Shelton, yeah. So Craig is he's a friend. He's a friend now. His teacher then, but he was always sort of a brilliant teacher. Like and always sort of he had you were comfortable around him as a teacher. Do you know what I mean? And as a drama teacher, he just had this kind of great way about him that meant that you could, for an all boys school, soften up around him. Do you know what I mean? If that makes
I do.
sense, because
I do.
we were very much like all boys. It was sports. It was all about sports and competition, and that kind of bled into the drama group that we had because it was a competitive group, but we all brought it out in each other.
Were you into sports as well? I mean, I know Woodlands was a sports academy.
Yeah, I love sports. I mean, that was part of my story, and part of was when I was, I enjoyed sports like cross country, I like football, and Sunday league, and I played for school at a lot of sports as well. That was really my life. Now, me as an actor, it was never on the cards for that to be a career, because I never went to there was a place in Coventry called YOG, Youth Operetics Group. I never knew about that place ever, really. It wasn't till I got into the West End, or got into musicals around 19, 20, around 20 years of age. And I met people who were from Coventry, and they were at this place called Youth. Now, we never went to that. We probably couldn't afford it, if I'm being honest, as a regular kind of commitment. My mum had 4 of us to look after, 3 boys and 1 girl, and so
And where are you? You oldest,
I'm the
youngest?
youngest boy. I'm the youngest boy. Yeah. So there's 2 older brothers, above me, and my little sister who's 20. I say little sister.
Yeah,
She's
she's always
nearly
going to be your
30.
little sister, though, isn't she?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So she's nearly 30, and yeah, she'll be 30 this year. And so my kind of first point of musicals or anything, I could always sing. This is how it happened. This is the story of how it happened, right? I grew up in like the social clubs in Coventry. There's a place called Tile Hill Social Club, which I used to go to as we used to go there Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It used to be kind of the youth club for the kids, and we'd run around. And I used to sing. I used to love Elvis. So Elvis was like, I used to take Elvis videos around with me instead of toys. I'd go and put a tape cassette of a video cassette of Elvis in, and I'd sit and watch like Acapulco or Roustabout or GI Blues, all of these kind of videos that we now know Elvis hated doing. Do you know what I mean?
And where did that come from? Did you have any influences around you, or was that just part of you?
Well, there was a guy called Tommy who was at the there was a guy called Tommy who I remember at the Tidal Social Club, and he liked Elvis. This guy liked Elvis. So somewhere along the line, I just, at the age of 4 or 5, I just liked Elvis. Like, and I got given the books, and I remember this Tommy guy went to Graceland and brought me a book back from Graceland when I was like 10, and I was like, oh my god, this is from Graceland, and the furthest we've been is to a trip to Alcudia or something like that. And we were never going to America. So this Tommy guy, and so it started out with me. I'd sing, and for some reason I always sang, like, and I had a good tone, and it was always kind of pushed in the family around the social club. Oh, Ian can sing. Ian's got a great voice on him. Do you want to sing? Do you want to sing as a song? And then I realised that I could monetize that at the age of like 7 or 8.
How did you do that?
Well, they'd say, "Do you want to sing?" And I'd say no. And then they'd say, "We'll each give you £1. We'll each give you £1 coin." So I'd be there, and you'd end up getting about £8. You'd end up getting about £8 around the table, and that would go straight on the arcade machines,
Yeah.
or a pack of KP peanuts,
Yeah.
It was just that kind of that was the way it was. And but I used to sing, and I used to sing songs. It was Elvis that I liked, but in the car, the influences were like Rod Stewart, the Drifters, the Carpenters. Like, it was that kind of older type of music that I was really interested in. Melody. I enjoyed melody more than beats, and I've learned that even now. I'm not really somebody who's into house music or whatever, but I love like melody and harmony, and there's something about that, and that's like across any kind of music across the world. Like, I can listen to Radio 3 or to put in world music into Spotify or any of those, and you get access to all of this, to world music. There's something about it that I just love. And so what would happen is, and around about 8 years of age, I got introduced to musicals. Now, my gran, she was the only person really in our family that enjoyed musicals. My uncle did a little bit, but she enjoyed musicals, and she had a cassette, a video of the Les Misérables 10th anniversary with Colm Wilkinson and Ruthie Henshaw, and and there I
Original
was, like,
crew.
I used to go up to my grand's all the time, and I used to sit there cross-legged in front of the TV, belting at the top of my voice, do you hear the people sing, who am I, these kind of things. And so it's kind of incredible now that for what I do as a job, like what I do as a job now, is it blows my mind, because that started when I was like 8 years of age, and I was obsessed with Les Mis, and I knew all the words. I knew all the words. And
The listener might not know what you do for a job, so
oh, okay, yeah. So now I play Valjean, who's the main character in Les Mis. I play it in the West End in the flagship production, and which is like, to me, it's like, I don't know, it's like life's complete. Do you know what I mean? It's like I've ticked every. If it was my super objective in life was to have my grand sit in the audience and watch me play Valjean in the audience, I get teary even thinking about it now.
yeah, I'm sure.
Because it's like, I wanted it since I was 8 years of age, but you can't be old enough until you're old enough, and it's kind of bittersweet because now I'm old enough, and now I'm old enough, and I always wanted, my gran to see me, and she came.
Oh, she did come.
Yeah, oh, yeah, she came. No, she came. She always got to see me, and she got
Oh
to
my
see me, and
God.
she's been unwell. She's not been well, and
What was that like, knowing that she was in the audience?
well, it's such a strange feeling. Like it because the show itself is like an overwhelming show. Like emotionally, it's an
I've
overwhelming.
seen it many times.
Yeah, like it's hard to hold. I remember in rehearsals, we were, you'd be in rehearsals and you're trying to hold the emotion of this guy who has to give up. When you really know what the story's about this constant surrender and sacrifice, do you know what I mean, of his own self will in order to do greater good. That's the idea of it, in order to do right by his daughter, who isn't his daughter, who he's basically taken her on because the mother died, which was Fontaine in the show. For the listener who doesn't know the story, he's about this sacrifice, and there's moments in it where, towards the end, where he has to sacrifice his daughter. He's going to walk away, and he's going to walk away because he can't let his dark past enter into her new future. All right, and that's the idea behind it. So he's never free of this stuff, and that's like, it's human. It's kind of it's a human story. That's why I think it affects people so much. It's people can relate to it. I certainly can relate to that. Like it's I don't want to jump around too much, but it's my
No,
life.
jump around. That's what this Not a Straight Line is what it's all about.
Well, my life has been like that. It's very much like I've had lots of struggles. I've had lots of struggles because of where I'm from, and because of where I'm from and how I was brought up. Maybe lack of a role model, lack of a role model, guidance. In religion, they'd say like lack of a father, that kind of thing. Discipline, lack of discipline, aimlessness. Or what you're met with when you have that kind of aimlessness going on is you're met with people who are pretty solid. Their foundations are pretty solid. I mean, it can be quite jarring quite often, and I've found that, and I've made decisions in my life that have caused huge problems and repercussions. You know what I mean? It's similar to, like, say, like Valjean, who made the decision to steal some bread. And he made the decision. I mean, I read in the book that he made the decision to steal the bread, but he could have asked the baker, and the baker would have given it him. But he made the decision to steal the bread because of the societal pressure, or his conditioning. It was a conditioned response. You know what I mean, to doing it, and you're like, well, why would you do that? But people do these conditioned responses.
Yeah, and you were talking earlier when you said at 21 that the way you were behaving, I guess there's an element of societal conditioning. You said you were drinking like a 21-year-old and just behaving like a normal 21-year-old. You're just doing, I guess, what you...
No responsibility, yeah.
No responsibility.
Yeah, no responsibility and no accountability, and the what came of that was the girls who I'm grateful for now, but at the time it was so hard, and me and the mother didn't really have a relationship. We didn't really know each other, like, really, and so that's something that's been problematic.
So just going back to Woodlands School, you were talking about you involved in drama, and then you wanted to say that you always sang. So was doing drama with Craig, Mr. Shelton, was that your first kind of exposure to that?
No, actually, the first exposure was with, I think it was Three Spires in Coventry. It was Three Spires, and it was they had so I could sing, and that's what people knew, but there was no acting going on, and there was an audition for Oliver, the Three Spires, and so if I would have been 10, it would have been in like 98, around 1998, and I was very young. I don't remember much of the rehearsals. It's interesting what you remember, isn't it? I can remember certain smells of the wood of the room that I walked into, but I don't remember the people who were teaching me, and or who were who was the director. Or I don't remember any of that at 10. Yeah, and so I didn't get the role of Oliver, but I got one of the orphans, and one of Fagin's boys. So we doubled up as both, and yeah, that was a really kind of fun experience because I was going there once a week, and that was, but we did it once, and then I got bullied a little bit. I think I was in year 6 at the time. I think I must have been 10, yeah. So I was in year 6 at the time. I got bullied for it,
At school?
Yeah, I don't know. It was at school or with my mates. I just know that it was met with people, sort of
What are you doing that
questioning.
for?
Yeah, what are you doing that for, and all of that. Why are you doing that for? And so my kind of response to that was like, okay, well, I ain't doing that then, you know. And so the next time I ever did do something was because of Craig, you know, Mr. Shelton, and the because I ended up doing. I think I did a few musicals in school, and I think mostly, you know, we were an all boys school, so we never saw girls ever. You know what I mean? Like we never saw girls ever. But what we did do was we teamed up with the all girls school, which was across the woods, you know. So that was the incentive, I think, you know, at the age of like 13, 14 and 15.
If you did a play, did they do joint productions?
Oh, the schools combined, yeah, the schools combined, and so the you know, and it would be like all the girls from across the woods would be coming over to rehearse, or we'd go over to their school, and you know, and you'd meet friends and young girlfriends and stuff like, you know what I mean. So it was yeah, that was and that was definitely part of it.
So what made you what made you, bearing in mind that you were bullied or made fun of for doing drama when you were a little younger, what made you kind of want to take it up at secondary school?
I don't know. I honestly, I think because I enjoyed it. But what was the thing that made me? I had a good friend called Graham. I've got a good friend called Graham, who's probably my only friend from Coventry that I speak to now. 'Cause I left there at such a young age, and ended up leaving Coventry just turned 16 to go to college, and yeah, me and him decided to do it, and we got in as ensemble members, and it was great, you know. And I enjoyed, like you say, I enjoyed the experience of mixing with the other schools. That was a good experience, and I enjoyed doing. I think we did either Anything Goes or Guys and Dolls. That was the first one. We did three in total: Anything Goes, Guys and Dolls, and then Cabaret. And so Cabaret, when we ended up doing Cabaret, I had a really good audition. I just didn't. I really enjoyed singing it. And Craig and a lady, Mrs. Muffet. I can't remember her first name because I only know Mrs. Muffet. Mrs. Muffet was the musical teacher, and it was Craig that said I could see something in you, something, and he was the one that gave me a part, so I got a role in the show, you know, and it was Ernst Ludwig in Cabaret, and it was, you know, and he trusted me with it, you know, and for me,
That's a big show for young people to do.
yeah, yeah, and to be honest, like I had no clue what it was really about, you know. You know, I was there just to sing a song, you know. I didn't understand the deeper meaning of what was going on in Cabaret because it's dark, isn't it? It's a dark show, and
Have you seen it in the West End?
yeah. I've
Isn't
been to
that
see it.
amazing?
Yeah.
Going in the back entrance to the theatre and
Yeah, it's cool. I've got a friend of mine who's in the MD of the band that starts it. You know, not the show band. They're like the pre-show band.
yeah, I know.
Um, yeah, he's been in it for a few years because it's a great gig for him. You know, he goes in and he plays a few tunes on his saxophone, and then, you know, and you see it's all like dark. You know, it's a great, you know, event. And yeah, and then he leaves at like then he leaves at like 7 o'clock, you know, 7:30 or 8 o'clock or whatever it is. So it's a nice gig for him. But it's yeah, I've seen that. And so yeah, so Craig gave me a part in that, and that was such a big moment for me. That was a good moment for me. You know, we talk about big moments, you know, that sort of change your life. Well, that gave me belief, you know. And someone, when an adult gives a young person, you know, it's why today. I had a similar experience the other way. With when I was at college, somebody turned around to me and says, You don't have the voice for Les Mis," and someone says, "You're not that kind of singer," because I was more of a rock, pop, and soul, and the shows that I've done, and we'll get onto those at some point. The shows that I've done have always been rock, soul, and pop because it was always this innate love for Elvis, and
Elvis,
you know what I mean. It was always, you know, Rod Stewart, Michael Bolton. It was 80s rock. I just enjoyed that, you know, and it came from my soul, you know, and so what's happened is over the years is I've tailored that other sound, you know, hopefully keeping it attached to the soul, you know, and sort of adding it as a string to the bow or something. So Craig gave me that opportunity. It was such a massive. I still remember. It's why I've got deep respect for him now. You know, and always sort of credit him as somebody who was one of the first people to give me the courage, just that little bit of courage. You know, and yeah, and then I did that, and then I also did a thing called which was in Southend, a thing called Teen Idol when I was 14, and it was like this event. It was just a singing competition that was, you know, it was jumping on the back of it was jumping on the
Pop
back of
Idol and
Pop Idol and those kind of things, which is pre X Factor, the pre Britain's Got Talent. It's like pre.
yeah.
And yeah, and I got into the finals for that, which was like one round of the semis and then one to the finals, and that was at the Royal Leamington Spa. That was in Leamington at the theatre there, and And that was my first experience at like a theatre, not the school show, but like a theatre that was, a big theatre to me. And yeah, and that went well. So
Did at that time, did you think, were you starting to think then that it could be your career, or was it just still something that you love doing and it was a
no,
creative outlet?
well, no, not really. Like because it was, it's. I never thought it could be a career. Like I even
Not now, surely.
no, no, no. I've been all right now. But like when I left school at 16, when I was 15, I was all prepared. I was set up to go to Kenilworth College, and do an electrician apprenticeship. So that was already, and I can remember that. I can remember filling out the forms to be an electrician apprentice, and it was, that was where I believed my life was going to go, because there was nobody that I knew about colleges. Plus the fact colleges were things that you pay for. The colleges, the musical theatre ones, they're ones that you pay for. And so
Did you not get on particularly well academically at Woodlands? Is that why you were going the apprentice route, or?
I g yeah, I did. But I was clever. But, if I was to get tested or something, they'd probably find some sort of ADHD or, my family had, issues, like I had a brother my brother who's 40 had, at the time, he was at the height of drug-induced schizophrenia schizophrenic episodes, drug-induced bipolar, basically, which he still lives with now, the bipolar, but less of the schizophrenic because he's more balanced now. But at the time, it was the height of it. Now, I was going to college, I was going to school 10, 11 years of age, and he would have been already kicked out of school by 15. But there was times where he would come into school, and one time he left a mental hospital, and I was in French. I remember being in French class. My brother basically had left the mental hospital that he was in, come into school in his dressing gown, and I think one slipper or something like that. I think it was someone told us it was that, and was, asking the head teacher for drugs, basically. You know what I mean? So his mind was sort of shot, and so I would get, there was times at school where I would get.
Were you embarrassed, or were you
Yeah, of
just
course.
concerned?
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Like that was totally embarrassing. It was because you can't, in a place like a school, in a school like Woodlands or that, there would be this kind of you would take the mick out of each other. But there's kind of, there's no one-upmanship of like, well, your brother's mental. Do you know what I mean? Your brother's asking the head teacher for drugs. Like you can't win that argument.
No.
So it's like you can't win it. So it's like you have to. So then what happens then is like, okay, well, if you can't win the argument, what happens? You get angry, don't you? And it's like you go primal with your response, And so I did used to sort of lash out at times, and because I didn't have the kind of, I couldn't verbalize it, I couldn't vocalize it, and and so like I would end up in stuff like anger management, or in detention blocks. And Mr. Shoughton knew, like he was somebody that, there's one of maybe two or three teachers in that thing that could see through that, and he still sees through it now. I think that's why he's probably put me in touch with you, you know, because it's not the not a straight line. Is like, there's lots that I've had to overcome in my life in order to get to where I'm at. But by overcoming it means I'm valuable where I'm at. It's by overcoming it, and by transcending those difficulties. But you need a vehicle to be able to transcend them. And that's where I think people can fall short. It's certainly where I fell short. Is that I didn't have a vehicle to transcend the issues that I was dealing with.
At that sort of age, what sort of vehicles are available to him? And the other observation that comes to mind is, in a way, I mean, absolutely fantastic that Craig and this other teacher or two that you mentioned about seeing your potential. On the other hand, you think, well, surely that's the job of being a teacher, is seeing that potential in your students and bring it out. But I guess sadly, it's not always the case,
Yeah, I mean,
because they've got their own issues, I suppose.
yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah, teachers are human. I mean, there's always remembering that. I mean, you don't think that, do you, when you're a child? You think you think everyone older than you is, you put a deity on them, that you believe that they're God, you believe they know it all and they have it all. And it's not until you get to like my age, like I believe in, like I'm not Christian or anything like that, but I enjoy Christian principles, and I enjoy the idea of us all being on a level and being children under, subordinate under a superordinate power. and that's
however you want to describe or think of it.
However you want it. I mean, it's not for me. It's not a man in the sky, but it's undeniable that there is something greater than I looking out for me. I believe that a lot. Well, it's been proven in my life. I mean, that will at some point we'll get on to the second thing, So ways to deal with it. Okay, so ways to deal with it at that time, because I couldn't. I think someone mentioned I went to there was some therapy that I did, and I was talking about how I used to sing when I was younger, and he said that there's this nerve. I can't remember what it begins with V, I think, and it runs up the side of your neck. And the idea is that you activate this nerve, and it's a calming, cathartic nerve.
Polyvagal.
Is that what it is? The polyvagal.
It's a polyvagal nervous system. Yeah.
That's it. So what you could say is that I've always maybe felt uncomfortable in my life as a youngster, as a child, in the environment that I was in, and my ability to sing has come out of that polyvagal nervous system, that activation.
It calmed you.
Thing. Yeah, yeah. And I remember times lying on my bed, and I was just, I would make a noise, and I would hold that noise for as long as I could, and I would feel it doing stuff to my body. I would feel it calming me down. It's not until I look back, it's not until I've looked back in my life that I realize just how, kind of difficult I would have found the childhood that I was in, and, we did work with a therapist and gone into it safely, and all of that. When you go into it, you look back and you go, oh God, this is a child that's really struggled, man. Like that, and that was the case. And
so you're 15 years old. You're about to go to Kenilworth College to be an electrician.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, what a different life you'd had if you'd done that.
Oh my God, yeah. Like, and all credit to electricians, but I'm not a handyman. I've never been a handyman. Me and my brother have always laughed about it. My brother is a year older than me, and I was 15, and what had happened around this time? So this holiday camp, where my daughters were, born, in that area in Great Yarmouth, was a place that I used to go to in the summer. And in the summers around my teens, we used to go there because my uncle worked there on the management, and so we'd get away for a couple of weeks, and that would be our kind of holidays. Probably give my mum a break basically from three boys, running circles around her. And I used to sing there in the talent competitions, and all of that. So people there knew that I could sing. And one of the theatre team there, a guy called Phil, he went to a college in Southend. So I'm set up. This is around May time. I'm getting ready to set up for August, September, going to do this electrician apprenticeship. And around about July, must have been July, I get my uncle, he speaks to my uncle, and they say, does he want an audition? Does he want an audition for a college? It's, and this place wasn't the best college. It was a dance college. They did some singing and they did some acting, but it was primarily a dance college. They tried to do all three of it, but it was a small building. It's akin to like Rocky's gym. There was always like buckets of water like dripping out the corner of it, and but it was the stepping stone for me, that I needed. And maybe I wasn't going to get into the better colleges because I had no previous, experience. And I got this audition on the Thursday. My uncle said, do you want to do the audition? I said, yeah, I'll give it a go. It was £100, and they found the £100 for me to do the audition. And I went down there on the Saturday. So I got told it on the Thursday, went down on the Saturday and did the audition. And I'm there, in my football kit, like proper Billy Elliot style, doing ballet, like doing a ballet lesson. I've never done ballet in my life. I had to do a bit of acting, and I had to do a bit of singing.
So you were auditioning for the whole thing, the dancing and the acting and the...
Well, yeah, it was a performance college. It was a place called Masters Performing Arts College. And there was a woman called Wendy Hedford, another, angel in my life who saw me for more than just, saw me, for what I wasn't. She saw me for more than what I wasn't. You know what I mean? And she, so I got the audition. So I'm doing ballet, and I'm like the worst dancer in the world. Like I've got no coordination. I've never done it before, and I'm trying my best. And I go in, and the last thing to do is to sing. And so I had to sing. And I sung "Bring Him Home," which is in Les Mis. Funnily enough, again another thing. I sung "Bring Him Home" to the best of my ability. Yeah, like it's. And I look back on it, and it was always my song, "Bring Him Home." It was my gran and granddad's song. Singers that song. And and I remember, I'm trying to remember it as accurately as I can. I went back in later that day because they had to like do their sort of deliberations, who's going to take, who's going to be the part, who's going to be part of the college, and so I got a full scholarship basically to go there, and which is a lot of money, like full scholarship. Bear in mind, if I didn't get a full scholarship, there's no chance. Like, we're talking full scholarship here. I remember we left. Yeah, I remember I went to my uncle who was in the car, and he said, "Look, we'll try and find the money," because I told him we got in, but I didn't tell him about the scholarship. I was sort of playing it, and he said, "We'll find the money," and I thought that was an amazing moment because
you knew they believed in you.
yeah, I knew that. Yeah, I knew that my uncle believed in me. Yeah, it was my uncle that was there, and I said, I've got a full scholarship. Yeah, and so then the next hurdle was, about moving down. And I moved down. So that was in the sort of July, August. I'm there, the end of August. Like, so within 2 months, the electrician thing has gone down.
And just for the listener who might not be in England, Coventry to Southend, it's a couple hundred miles. Like, Southend's on the eastern. Go to London and then keep going east towards the sea. You get to Southend on Sea.
Yeah. Like, it's a big move to make. And I was, my birthday's July, so I was just 16, just turned 16, and I remember I was sharing two single beds in a room in a lady called Lennon Reaney Jones, and they were my landlord and landlady. Amazing people, like amazing people. You can't, like I said, I've always been looked after. Like, I've always been looked after.
I mean, that's a right at the beginning of the conversation. I asked that question, the zigs and zag, and you said there were two, 21 and 28. But this to me seems like the ultimate zag in your life, because you were going towards being an electrician, and now you're like 90 degrees, if not 180 degrees away from that. So really your life is totally epitomizes not a straight line.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting, isn't it? Because I think if I was to make the full move over those 3 events, maybe they had to happen in stages.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have been able to handle it. It was like, but I believe it. There's this thing in, just going back to Les Mis, there's a thing in the story when I was reading the book of it, and there's a thing in it where Valjean doesn't know how to read when he's in prison. All right, he learns to read in prison, but he learns to read to do bad. He wants to do bad with it, to get back at the government, to, this system basically. So he's going to do bad with it. That's his aim. Then he takes this orphaned girl, Cosette, and he's teaching it. And there's a moment in the book where he's teaching her to read for the first time. And so he had this kind of, and he looks up at what he believed to be, because it's Christian God in I don't know, he looks up and he has a smile as if to say, "Oh, maybe you knew all along," and I truly believe that today. Like, I believe that the experience of leaving Coventry and the girls, what happened with the girls, and then the other thing that happened is and then the opportunities that I've been presented with in order to bring that experience to it has been a happening that is completely out of my control.
Yeah. How did that come about, actually getting the opportunity to audition for Valjean? And how did you feel? I mean, this is like the culmination, going back to when you were 8 years old and singing "Bring him home" for your granny and granddad.
Well, I think it kind of moved into, because you have to be proven to be able to do it. It's a big sing, it's a big role. It's 2.5. Well, no, it's 3 hours basically, and it's 3 hours, 7:30 to 10:30, and you're hardly off stage. And when you are off stage, you're getting changed, and so it takes stamina, and so you have to kind of prove yourself as somebody who can maintain and do it 7 times a week. You get 1 day off, which is the Monday. And it's hard. And I think as the way that my career unfolded is that I was trusted with these big roles. Like, before doing Les Mis, there was JCS, Jesus Christ Superstar, and I played Jesus in that on the UK, around the UK. Was at the Birmingham Hippodrome, and huge role, another huge role, musical theatre role. Before that was a role I did, The Commitments, which was the Irish soul band, which again was a big role. That was like 18 soul songs. You're just screaming. You just, and you've got to try and work out how to maintain it. And I think, and I'm luckily enough, fortunate enough that I managed to learn how to look after my voice, because I didn't do any kind of singing lessons. It was just me trying to work out who and what I am, how I feel, and the sounds that are coming out of my mouth. And yeah, probably would have made it easier if I'd gone to some singing lessons, to be honest, instead of trying to work it out for myself the whole time. But
so you've never had singing lessons. It's a natural talent that you have. Vocal coaching, I guess.
I had 10 lessons, around 10 lessons when I think I was doing Rock of Ages. I did a musical called Rock of Ages in the West End. That was my first West End show. I mean, that to me was yeah, kind of crazy because that was, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do 10 just to get a warm up because at the end of every lesson they give you 2 minutes. So I thought, okay, well at least now I've got a 20-minute warm up that's tailored to my voice, and I had that. So I've had those 10 lessons, and then other than that, sporadically I've had a lesson here or a lesson there, but I've never gone to lessons, singing lessons. It's all just kind of innate, basically. I've learned through listening and imitating sounds, and then being able to control that. You know.
When I asked Craig about you very briefly, I don't do much research on my guests before I start. He described his observation of you of having a phenomenal work ethic.
Mm.
Do you resonate? Do you resemble that remark?
Um, yeah, I think so. I'm quite addicty in the way that I will approach something, you know. I wasn't always like that, you know. I think it was I like to be in control of what I'm doing, you know. Like so I like to so say with Les Mis, it's like I don't really enjoy the rehearsal process, you know, of things. I've learned to enjoy the uncomfortability of a rehearsal process now, you know, whereas before, I would make myself ill in rehearsal process because I wasn't in control. I wasn't understanding it all. I wasn't trying to bring a full character, and I wasn't trying to piece it out. And whereas now, some of the work ethic comes from, like, I want to do my best at trying to take the hand of the writer. You know, I want to be able to take the hand of the writer and then let the work soar, you know, and that's the aim for me. And so to get in to get my to get my head around stuff. I mean, you know what you must know what it's like as an actor in the beginning when you start. You know, it's just paper. It's just a piece of paper, and you're separate from it, and then you have to learn about it, and then you learn about it to the point where you can step into it. Some actors are different in the way they approach it, but I have to learn so much about it that I can step into it and then can embody the character, and that there's not one bit of what I'm saying or what I'm doing on stage that doesn't make complete sense and isn't moving in the direction of what the writer is trying to give, you know? And because I'm not one for trying to make it about me, you know? I see it nowadays, and it wasn't always this case. That, you know, when I first went into singing and musical theatre, it was about how high can I sing? How can I show off? You know, I was one of those kind of guys, and then over time it became almost like an act of service. And it's so you have to. So for me, it's about serving the text, serving the writer, serving the audience, you know, and delivering.
So what I'm curious, what about the rehearsal process, you know, either jars with you or do not enjoy?
I think it's again, I think it's from where I'm from. Like, I don't like the idea of feeling stupid. I don't think, that idea of not knowing enough. Bear in mind I'm a working class lad from Coventry, and you're moving into a middle class arena. And which is what musical theatre is. What theatre is. It's a middle class place, and so. And there are people who are very, very good. And because I've come through, not a straight line way into it, there was no text work, at college. There was no learning how to dissect and to, pull things apart and, what's your objective? What's your super objective? What are your tactics in each moment? That wasn't something that was part of it. So again, I was just, the way that my career has worked out is I had this voice that got me the job, and then it would take me a lot longer to get on top of the text, or than it would, say, somebody who was more intelligent. It's as simple as, somebody
More
who
intelligent or more experience?
Oh, I think intelligent and experienced, but I think intelligent as in they could look at the text and they could dissect and pick it out. Emotionally, maybe not intelligent, you know what I mean? But they certainly could. They were more well read than I. Like, I didn't read many books before, say, I don't know, 24, 25. I wasn't somebody who could sit down and read a book. I had a very busy, I had a busy mind, a busy life. I was too busy. And so it's interesting, isn't it, how you can be very, very busy doing all the wrong things, that if you can find a way to, like, well, I think what happens now is as I've started in my life taking away those things taken away those things that don't serve me, and now I can be busy doing the right things. And it's amazing how your life is like putting the sails in the right place, and then and the boat just moves. you know. Um,
Did you get a sense that the sails were starting to be put up in the right place when you're 16? You're in this room in this boarding house in Southend. Did you get a sense that your sails were filling, moving in the right direction? Or
I know I didn't want to be in Coventry. I know I didn't want to be in Tile Hill. I didn't enjoy Tile Hill. I wasn't really part of I'm from Tile Hill, but I was kind of different. There was a difference about me. I was softer. I was probably more emotional, or I don't know. There was something about me that didn't feel like I fitted in Tile Hill. So I didn't hang around with the gangs. I remember I used to always, I used to head down like Woburley, Allesley, Mount Nod, East. I always didn't want to be where I was. Moving out of Cov, there was almost this kind of sense of relief from how I felt with that and new opportunity. And I mean, the truth is now, being a grown up, is like, look, you can bury your stuff, but you bury it alive. Cov was never the issue. My ability to be able to handle the situations that came up in Coventry was the issue. That's something that I've learned, like I say, later on, like when I was like 28, 29, is to understand that, how that I was affected by, yeah. So it's those tools that I wasn't given, the ability to be able to understand and share and all that kind of stuff.
but did you have a sense that you knew you were moving in a different direction because you weren't at electrician's college, but did you have a sense that you were moving in a direction that was more you?
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I really took to ballet. I enjoyed doing ballet. I loved it. Like I had a good point on my foot, and I think my football legs were quite strong, so it helped with ballet, and I had good facility. That was something I did. I didn't enjoy tap. I was certainly put in a more just less academic, more practical. I was put to more practical use. Using skill sets, using artistry, and I feel like that's me and my brother have it. We've got my oldest brother has a different dad. Me and my brother, who's a year older, we have the same dad. And then my younger sister has a different dad. So there's three dads. Me and my brother, who's a year older than me, he's an amazing guitarist. All right, he's an amazing guitarist. He's still back in Tile Hill, and but he's an amazing guitarist. Got a good voice on him. Plays the drums. He's got artistry in him, and he draws. All right, so he's got artistry in him. It's just there. And it's kind of interesting with schools and stuff nowadays, isn't it? How they don't push that kind of stuff, because there are people who have that, have like artistry as their number one, and it's vital. Like it's kind of vital to unleash that. Like I don't know why or whatever, but I know that in my life I've affected people because of the work that I've done, positively. I've especially the stuff like JCS, or say like in the commitments, when I get to a place like in a zone where I'm singing a song, I'm doing Try Little Tenderness, and I can unleash, I unleash notes, and I let my physicality go, and I move, and like I'm no longer me. I'm part of something that is giving.
You're channeling something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're channeling something, and that affects people, like it, because I don't know what it does. I don't know why, but it's something that people look at and they go, man, and it opens up parts of their being that maybe.
Raising their consciousness.
Yeah, and yeah, and there's something, it awakens people. That's the point of art for me, is to awaken.
The point of the magic, really.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's something that was never going to be any. So yes, you're right. So by moving to college, that world opened up for me, that I could perform. And then luckily enough, when I was 18, I got a pantomime up in Halifax, and that was funny because, I thought I'd made it, and it's, 4 weeks later. And then from there, I did a few other jobs, and a few other jobs. I was an ensemble member and a dancer, actually. I wasn't really a singer in a Beatles musical at 19, 20. I ended up doing 4 years at college as well. They kept me back for 2 second years because I wasn't good enough. I had a voice, but like when I would act, I would walk the same arm as leg because I was so self-conscious. When I was dance, I would jump from straight legs, I'd have bent legs in the air, and I'd land on straight knees again. It took me a while to really thingy, and I'm grateful to the principal, Wendy Hedford, who gave me the 4th year scholarship for that. So, and I still left college at 19. It's crazy.
Do you remember how you felt when you were held back?
Yeah, I kind of understood it. Like I kind of understood it, and I didn't really put up a fight. I think maybe there was fear to go out into the big world anyway. So I was like, oh, okay, great, I'll stay here on this free living. we were on housing benefit at the time as well. So me and my mate Rich were living in 2 single beds in this house, and we lived there for 4 years in 2 single rooms in the same bedroom. Do you know what I mean? And from the years of 16 to 20, imagine that.
Mhm.
2 lads, and we didn't know each other before, so we just got put together, but we both couldn't afford it. And so we split the housing benefit to make sure that we could afford it. And we lived on £30 EMA money each week, and so,
You knew each other by the end.
well, yeah, we're like brothers now, it's like, yeah, he's still a baby, bless him, so, and, we're like brothers. We were, forged together, and he, funny enough, again was somebody that was put in my path to learn something from. He was an incredible dancer, is an incredible dancer, like phenomenal. And, he was great. And he would sit on the end of the bed, and he would sit on the end of his bed. Because I had like tone and melody, but I didn't have like rhythm properly, so I didn't know what like nodding my head on the on beat was and then nodding it on the off beat. So he was there, like, and he literally teaching me to nod my head on the on beat and the off beat. And, I'm grateful to him because he inspired me to want to move my body, and dance. And, I looked up to him and, still look up to him as a dancer. And, I've done jobs in like at the National Theatre where I've had to dance on the National Theatre, the main stage, the Olivier stage at the National. It's incredible for somebody who'd never danced a step at 16, and who ended up, yeah, it's kind of incredible when I think about that. I'm dancing with like, my choreographer's Bill Deemer, who's like one of the best choreographers in the world. He choreographs on Strictly, all of that kind of stuff, and I'm there blagging it.
Well, we're all doing that to some extent, really.
Yeah, I've accepted that as well. Yeah, I've accepted that it's all a blag. Yeah, what was it that somebody said? All the do-gooders are troublemakers on the basis of what was it? Let me save you from drowning, said the monkey safely putting the fish up the tree. We all don't really know what's going on. I like that as a leveler of like, no one really knows, and what we're sure of today might not be sure of, in a year's time. And that's been proven time and time again. Yet people are so sure all the time.
And was that was one of those times when you were 28, when you were sure of something and then it changed, kind of circling back to that?
There was a few things that went on. I was really working hard in my career. So from 21, when the girls were born, I was working. I did Hair the musical. I did Rock of Ages the musical. I went into the Commitments.
These are relatively long gigs, presumably, are they? Like,
Yeah, like year at a time. Rock of Ages did for 2 years, because I ended up going from ensemble to an alternate. So I did the main part 1 day a week in Rock of Ages, which was great for me. It meant that 1 day a week, you could get like professional, industry people in to come and see you perform, and see you. You had a showcase once a week, basically, and which was great. And then from there, I got the Commitments, which was at the Palace Theatre in the West End, and that was with Jamie Lloyd, the director. Jamie Lloyd has just directed Sunset Boulevard, and that's just gone to Broadway, massive. Nicole Scherzinger. Yeah, I got that, and I got this. Now all the while, I was living in London, and my kids were in Great Yarmouth, and I didn't know how to drive, and do you know what I mean? It was a struggle, like getting the train on a Sunday, 4 hours to see them, and then 4 hours back to go back to work, and because there would be like bus replacements, and so there was long periods of time where I didn't see the girls, and so to make up for that kind of, because I didn't know how to be, I was making up how to be a dad. Do you know what I mean? And because it didn't fit with how I was making it up in my mind, what would happen was I would channel my energy into working harder. It would be like, oh, well, if I work harder and I earn more money, then that's a way to deal with it. And to make sure that, so that was a way of dealing with it. But what happened with that is it doesn't feel that doesn't fulfill you spiritually. Like, it doesn't fulfill you spiritually. In fact, it has the opposite effect, because there's all you're doing is just you're moving into like an addiction towards work in order to fix a spiritual hole that's created by not kind of being there for the girls as often as I should have been. And
going back to being you can be buried alive again.
yeah, it's the same thing. And then what happened is my career was like going up and up and up, and I was doing like, I was the alternate in the Commitments, and there was some TV gigs that I did. I remember I did Paul O'Grady, and there was some other gigs that I did that were big moments where the main guy was ill, and I had to step up last minute to do like Paul O'Grady, and his guests were like Susan Boyle and Amir Khan. It was around that kind of time of their height of fame, and I had like this 7-minute section on there with Paul O'Grady and the cast, and it's online now, it was a sink or swim moment. It was basically just, I got the call in the morning, "Are you okay to do this for 7 minutes? It's live on TV." And I was like, "Okay." I went, I went, "Okay." But it ended up being an amazing moment, because, that then was a, broadcast, it was online and people could see me give it my all in this job. And I really gave it my all, and people could see the potential there. And so then I got my first principal role, which was in Beautiful, the Carole King musical, which was at the Aldwych Theatre, which was amazing. It was an original cast. They've all been original casts, which help. It's always good when you've got, because there's lots of hype around an original cast. And Beautiful was being transferred over from Broadway, and it was all British cast, a couple of Americans in it, but I think they lived here. And I played Barry Mann, who was one half of the songwriter partnership of Barry Mann and Cynthia Wilde, Mann and Wilde. And they wrote songs along with Jerry Goffin and Carole King. They were in, rooms with each other in the Brill Building, which was a songwriting factory, basically in New York. Yeah, and he ended up, so I ended up playing that part. And they wrote songs like "You've Lost That Loving Feeling" and wrote "On Broadway," and they wrote, so I was writing my element of music that I love anyway. I got my main song, and it was "We Got to Get Out of This Place," and the Animals, and it was and I really enjoyed it. I loved it, and because it was an opening show, we opened the show as a new production. It was eligible for like Olivier Awards and stuff, and I got nominated for Best Supporting Actor. And so I had these two worlds going on at the same time, where I wasn't seeing the girls as much as I should have, and I was working hard, and so I was being celebrated in my career. And I think what happened during that period is, with that kind of soul sickness, I drank a lot, and I partied a lot, and the wheels started falling off. It's as simple as, the wheels started falling off. I did a couple of years in Beautiful, and I was really struggling to maintain my life. Like, my life was unmanageable, basically. Yeah, and because
But I guess on the outside, though, you used a beautiful phrase there, which I've not heard before: soul sickness. It just encapsulates so much. But I guess from the outside, though, people looking at your life from the outside would have seen you as a successful West End actor, presumably.
yeah, of course. So people would see that, and that's what I'd present online. And online it would be that, and you'd be trying to push this career that was going well.
So what did the wheels falling off actually look like?
Well, for me, the wheels falling off at the time, I mean, this was a long time ago now. They would have been 26, 27. The wheels falling off would be, I'd be out partying a lot, and, after every show or something, I'd go out and I'd party, and I'd be chasing it, I'd be chasing, because I had this, like you say, this soul sickness, you over egg the dopamine hit, you know what I mean? You just want that. You just want to feel good. I just want to feel good. And I didn't know how to handle these situations, both situations that were going on. And what happened then was, some other personal things, some financial things, lots of things that were starting to cause problems, financial problems. And, because it's very difficult to go out all the time and pay child maintenance and save, and do you know what I mean? And all of that, especially if you're chasing it. And at that point, if I'm being really honest, it wasn't a fact of me chasing it anymore. It was, I remember this sort of Chinese proverb, which is about like, the man takes a drink, the drink takes a drink, and then the drink takes the man. And I was in that last part of it now, where like it was a necessity for me, not just, and drink is just one word for anything that you become sort of addicted to. It could be gambling, could be whatever, food or whatever.
Would you say were you bordering on being alcoholic? Would you say?
Yeah, like I was certainly using alcohol to change the way that I felt. Yeah, certainly. And so when I was 28, it got bad enough, basically, so I went to a place, like a recovery place, basically, to help myself out with that kind of stuff. And that's where, and it was a sort of a recovery place that helped me. It introduced me to the idea of sort of powerlessness, and it introduced me to the idea of a higher power, like the idea of to stop playing God. I don't have to manage it anymore. You know what I mean? And to become this idea of being a conduit or a something that basically the pressure's off my shoulders now. You know what I mean? You got people that walk around the world with the weight of the world on their shoulders, and usually it's because they're trying to deal with so much themselves and there's no help. And I think that was my problem growing up, was I never really ever asked for help, properly, and I never really learned how to in Coventry properly, but I did learn how to get away and to run, and to hide and to bury my head in the sand with things. And I learned those kind of skills in Coventry and became very good at that. But the problem is if you want a life that's going to flourish, and if you want to, if you want a life that's going to that's going to open up, you can't keep running from that stuff. And yeah, so at 28, like the decision to stop drinking was important, So that was it. So and that's been nearly 8 years now, But that was with help, So it was, that to me was another moment in my life where, like, okay, cool, you have gone as far as you can go doing it on your own, and you've done some brilliant things, but you're very unwell, mentally and spiritually, and that was what happened, and it kind of doesn't matter what it just brings to light, like when people say, look, it doesn't matter what you've got materially, that if you're not, yeah, like if you're not connected to something greater than yourself, it's very tricky to just enjoy life, be happy. It's very tricky to be like that.
Are you happy now?
Am I happy now? It's a good question. You should never ask someone that. Am I happy now? Yeah, I am. Like I'm in an eerie kind of period in my life, if I'm being honest. I got the best job in the world for me. Do you know what I mean? I got the best job in the world.
A lifelong ambition. I mean, talk about, realizing your dreams. This is,
Yeah, yeah.
you are living it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have, look, everything's in place. It's for me. Like I said, I've got the best job. I'm living my childhood dream. I've just bought my home. I've just, my relationship with the girls is as good as it's ever been. And yeah, and it's, that's partly because they're a little bit older now. They're 14, and they want to be with their mates often. So there's a little bit of pressure off. I mean, there was times when we were, I'm on tour, and you just got to do what you got to do. And I'll be on tour and I'm driving, and I'll be in like Cornwall, and I'll have to drive like 7 hours after 2 shows on a Saturday, and you're getting home for like 4 o'clock to Great Yarmouth, and and because I don't live over that side of town, I'm in a hotel, so I stay in a hotel, and I'm up at 10 with the girls, and then I'm back on the road, and I'm driving to like Liverpool from Great Yarmouth, on the Sunday. So these long kind of journeys, and that's kind of less of that kind of strain, because it is strenuous, it's hard, but that's all part of what happened when I was 21, you know what I mean? So I take accountability and responsibility for that.
It's kind of going back to what you were saying earlier about Valjean being about sacrifice. You recognize that you had to continue to make sacrifices
Yeah,
for your children.
yeah. I mean, I had to, and still have to. And learning now, because sometimes I use the word sacrifice in conversation to people who don't really understand what it means. And the way I see it is like, to sacrifice something means that tomorrow will be better. Do you know what I mean? Or something like that. It's the idea of sacrifice is that, I sacrifice those journeys for a better relationship with my kids. I sacrifice of myself on stage. Do you know what I mean? I think sometimes people think it's like the sacrifice of a lamb or something, and that there's murder involved, or it's not about that.
Was that sense of sacrifice made more real for you doing Jesus Christ Superstar? What was that? What was that like?
No, I think I understood it anyway. I understood the story of JCS. I think the job was handed me because I understood it, and I think that was like an unconscious thing that happened. I think I was given JCS, one, because I could sing it, it's hard to sing, but two, because I really understood that this guy wasn't doing it for nothing. The idea of whether you believe in Jesus or not, the idea of this guy that sacrifices it, even in the face of, he sacrifices and keeps sacrificing himself. His friends turning on him, and yeah, it's kind of, I just believe there to be value in it,
You mentioned that you described this time of your life as being a little bit eerie. What do you mean by that?
I feel like I completed it, it's like, I feel like I've completed everything. And my super objective, like I said, was to be in Les Mis as a kid. I've got the job that I always wanted. I own my house, and I never thought that was a possibility from where I'm from. I'm not from the place where you buy houses. That comes with you, and so I own my home, and like I said, and I've reached this point in my life where I'm like, there's new aims and new goals to come, and I never thought, like, who gets to live that? Like, who achieves that? How many people get to achieve their ultimate dream? Enough to then go like, oh, well, I need to create new ones now. No one ever thinks they're going to achieve their ultimate dream. You know what I mean? And it happened to me, and I can't believe it. Like, I cannot believe it. I'm on stage. When I'm on stage, it will get to the bows or towards the end, and I'll just get this feeling, this overwhelming feeling of like, I cannot believe I'm here. It's because you always believe that you always have this kind of imposter syndrome of like, they're going to find me out. They're going to find me out.
Do you feel that even now?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. But I mean, I understand it's, there's kind of utility to that as well. There's utility in that it keeps you marching forward.
Keeps you sharp. Yeah.
Yeah, it keeps you sharp. Like, and I've never been the kind of person who's like, well, I belong here now. The only time I ever felt like that actually was at my lowest spiritual time, when I was nominated for Olivier, and when thinking, I thought I've arrived. But the only problem with that is the cloud disintegrates and you realize you've not arrived anywhere. All of that is just chasing, and that was a moment, and that was at my lowest self-esteem wise, was when I, because I needed to believe that I'd arrived in order to probably, as a survival technique, I think. I think that's what it's about. It's a survival technique. Whereas now it's like, to a lot of people, I have arrived, but to me, I honestly take this as, it's a gift of a job that I have to give back, and I have to be of service to, and that it's being given to me as a responsibility, and I have to pass that on, and there is no arriving. Do you know what I mean? There's only a recommitment to it every day.
God, so beautiful.
Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. If you knew then, whenever then is for you, if you knew then what you know now, would you change anything? Would you do anything different?
No, I can't change anything. I don't believe you really can. Of the ultimate, like, I don't know. There's something happening. There's something happening that is going on that's above what I can see. And I think the idea of, I remember this lovely saying: we use every situation, every problem as a situation to demonstrate God's omnipotence. Whatever you believe God to be, but or the principles of good, so omnipotence. And I think that without all of the negative stuff that ever happened, or what I perceived to be negative at the time, I remember listening to one of your podcasts, the bit about it, and they started speaking about the farmer.
Good or bad, who can say?
Yeah, and you look back, and there's been times in my life where I've gone, "That's really bad, man," and I've believed it, and then out of that came something. It's like every bit of experience I've had, even coming from Coventry, even from Tile Hill, all of those experiences. If you can take away the victim aspect of it, the victim aspect, and it is just like, there was some rough stuff that went on, and at the time, if you can take away the victim aspect of it and use it as something to, like you say, to transcend it, to go into it, to look at it, to put light on those things, to go into the mindsets of the people who did stuff too, what I mean, who affected you, and and understand them as humans, other children of other people's children, it's all of that kind of stuff. You can never say that if you were to walk in their shoes that you would have done anything different anyway. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, I had an amazing saying, my guest on the podcast yesterday, and he said, and he learned this when he was in high school, as an American guy. He said, if I don't like someone, I just don't know them well enough.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, and that's something, isn't it? To like, how many times have you gone up to somebody and you say you don't like them, and so you've just disregarded getting to know them. And yeah, it's interesting, really. I wish I took this advice on more, but I remember that this guy was talking about how his dad, he never got on with his dad, and he never got on with his dad, but his dad made, because his dad wouldn't give him the love that he deserved, and all this kind of stuff. And his dad used to make him sandwiches every day, and used to make him sandwiches for school, and he'd give his kid the sandwiches, and the kid would go outside and, every day lobby sandwiches in the wheelie bin, a year later or 2 years later or whatever, the mum would say, I can see that you're, something happened. Or I think maybe the dad passed away or something. And the mum says, look, I see that you've been throwing away you threw away those sandwiches all those times and stuff like that. And the idea of it being that was the only way that he knew how to show love, you know what I mean, was to, and his mum then said to him, do you know how much care he put into making those sandwiches every day? It wasn't like he just made sandwiches and just shoved them in you know what I mean? He took care of them and he did this kind of stuff. And it made me, and he also then said, it makes him ask the question, how many gifts has he ever been given that he's just thrown away? And similarly to that kind of experience with the guy who says it, somebody who you don't like, it's like, if you get to know that person, well, how do you know they're not a gift that you're just throwing away if you don't ever get to know, you know? And again, that's not their problem, that's my problem. So it's about like trying to be connecting, more connecting, isn't it, in getting to know people, yeah. But it's difficult, isn't it? Because we have lots of, nowadays there's lots of struggles with people. People have lots of struggles, and that's a disconnecting thing, isn't it? You can't, because it's like, okay, well, I've got lots of struggles. It means I haven't got time for you. I don't know who you are. I mean, I could say that to you today, like, I'm coming to this podcast, and it could have just been not getting to know you, or you not getting to know me, or it could have just been like other podcasts that I've done where they ask a few questions, you say a few things, and then you get out, and there's no real kind of connection. It's kind of why I like what you did in the beginning, where you sort of, you allow the space to just to connect, and maybe to step out of the norm, the kind of matrix thing, you step out of it and it's like, okay, now we're here now and present and talking.
Do you feel connected to all the different versions of Ian that we've touched on in this conversation, the 8-year-old and the 10-year-old and the 16-year-old, or do you see them as kind of like being different people almost?
I started therapy a little while ago, and like regularly, like every week, and because I couldn't link stuff, like I couldn't link my history together, and so I wanted to sort of go back into my history and talk about all of those kind of things, all the stuff of the past, and develop a relationship with me, because I don't think I have been. I think I've taken them as chapters and then disregarded them, and that it's not been one continuous journey, but it has been one continuous journey. Funnily enough, though, it's very difficult to see the man when you're the POV. Do you know what I mean? Your point of view is everything you're looking at. It's never you, is it?
Mm-hmm. There was a saying, you can't see the label from inside the bottle.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. And so it's kind of tricky. Yeah. There's one kind of thing that I've had from my childhood, which I was gutted about, really, which was we had a flood on our street. We had a flood on our street, and we had all the photos, the old photos, the Polaroids would be all the negatives, and that were on the cabinet on the ground floor. So we lost all photos of us as kids, up until the age, I mean, we must have been like 13, 14. So we would have lost all photos of all holidays, all of that. They all got destroyed in the flood. It was gutting, because it does make it tricky that if you, like you say, you can't see the message from inside the bottle. Is it that saying?
You can't see the label from inside the bottle. Yeah,
you can't see the label from inside the bottle. Yeah. So you need those kind of things, like, to look back on and help you sort of see you as at the age you were. Otherwise, you're reconstructing it. And but then there's a blessing in that, isn't there, as well? Because you can restruct who you are as positively or as negative as you want. You know what I mean? I could make myself more handsome, that kind of thing.
Not possible, surely, Ian.
I don't know about it. Yeah. Anyway.
So you talked about, you live in the dream, 8-year-old Ian singing Bring Him Home, and now you're doing it every night in the West End. But what is next for Ian McIntosh after this?
I don't know. It really is I'm bamboozled for now. Do you know what I mean? I'm actually okay not thinking about it too much. I'm enjoying doing this gig. We'll see what happens with this. Whether I stay on and do a little bit longer because I enjoy it so much. That all depends on, on a few lots of things. There might not even be an option, Yeah. But I've done some amazing things. Like, I look back at my career and it's like some of the things I've done, like performing when I did We Will Rock You, the Queen musical, I got to perform with like Brian May on stage, and, I performed with Carole King in front of 60,000 people. And I've been on Britain's Got Talent, semi-finals, singing live in front of 25 million people. When I sit down, and I never do this that often, podcasts where you talk about yourself and your life, it's extraordinary, like what I've managed to achieve and what I've been entrusted with. That's what makes me laugh. What people have entrusted with me. The responsibility of singing in front of 25 million people, and you go out there and you do it. I remember doing that. No, it wasn't that actually. It was a 12,000 seater big night of musicals event, and usually it's on BBC. And I was going out there. I was doing some Queen stuff out there, and it was the first time I did like a big arena, 12,000 seater, and we were singing "We Will Rock You," and buddy, you're a boy, make a big night, and you could just see these hands of like 12,000 people just clap out, clap out. And I remember, because I'd never done it before, I was
want to be a rock star.
Yeah. Well, this is it. Well, I felt like I was, but you don't know how you're making it up again, aren't you? Do you know what I mean? You just make it up. So I remember I'm trying to give all of my energy to like the back of the room where like everybody's just a blur. Like, you don't see anybody past the first few thousand, So you're like that, you give all your energy. Anyway, I come off stage and I've tried to give of myself way too much. And I come off, I went back to the hotel and I lay on the bed. And I was like the adrenaline. I had to lie on my bed because I felt like I was going to pass out. Like it was the most strangest because, and I've learned, you learn from your mistakes. There's been loads of those kind of things where like you've just gone full on, you just go for it. And then at the end of it, you pay the price and hope that you survive. It's, yeah, that's one thing I'm kind of proud of myself about, very much so. Like just give it a go, like just go.
It sounds like all the different parts of your life that we've touched on, that you've been present, you've done the best you can with what you have, with where you are. Not too much sense of what's happening next. It's like you doing the best that you can.
Yeah, I think so. I'm human, so I do look on. You know what I mean? I do look for what's next, and certainly getting sober. Pre getting sober, I was very much what's next, because materialist, totally. So you're unsatisfied, dissatisfied. You're always dissatisfied, or I was anyway. And because you're always you're trying to fill the pie. You're trying to fill the pie with we call it I call it like a God-shaped hole. You're trying to fill that God-shaped hole with stuff that isn't that. You know what I mean? And so the thing is with that is like a sand. The sand timer is always depleting. You're always losing it. So the idea is that post recovery and sobriety, it's it's been more about accepting life and living for today. Living for today, doing the best that I can for today, not to live too emotionally ahead of yourself. In order to become the best that you can today. It's like, well, how much if you're living emotionally in tomorrow and next week, or you're just resonating at a different frequency. You just, you know what I mean? There's probably fear that's stopping you, and you end up paralyzing yourself today. And that's procrastination, isn't it? It's that's where that comes in, which is like procrastination is such a killer, man. It's like it's the worst.
You experience that, do you?
Yeah, of course. Like I love nothing more than just strumming the same 4 chords on a guitar. Do you know what I mean? For a couple of hours, and not getting on with stuff. But I do, but nowadays it's more, like I say, I look to a higher power for guidance, inspiration, and direction. And the proof of that, basically, I just get better advice than I give myself. And maybe it's all lies that I'm telling myself, but I behave better within that ideal. Does that make sense? Yeah, so I behave better within that kind of lie, if that's the case. Maybe I'm somebody who feels like I have to be doing something for somebody else in order to do something. Maybe I'm not somebody who can. In fact, I've never really, I find it very difficult to do stuff for myself, if I'm being honest. If there isn't like an audience, like I'm a deadline guy. You know what I mean? I have to get as close to the deadline as possible before I really.
Have you ever been tested either self-diagnosis for ADD, ADHD?
No, but
there's quite a lot of what you said that's kind of
is it?
Right,
okay,
the whole deadline thing is
No, for sure. Well, for sure.
very typical.
Yeah, I've been told by ex-girlfriends definitely I should get tested. Yeah, the ones that see me up close, the ones that see me up close and stuff like that. I've always been nervous to sort of go and get tested for it, and maybe it's something that over the years I've sort of like I really believe in the power. Like I really believe in like the power of God. So I think what I'm doing is over these last sort of 7.5, 8 years is what's happened in my life and how I've grown up and how there's been lots of things mentally that have sort of disintegrated from me that were causing me problems. And if ADD is something that is still there, then maybe do you know what I mean? I should get tested for those if those behaviors are still there. But I do believe that, you know,
Is that growing up that you talked about there? Is that something that can only happen with time, or is there any kind of you think universal truths or things that you've learnt which is possible to fully know and embrace at a younger age, or do you think you can really only get there when you've been around the sun a few more times?
yeah, I mean, I went to this place. I got a friend of mine who's he follows a guy called Sri Ramana Maharshi. All right, he's a guru, died in like the 50s, I think. And the idea of this guy was 16. He was asked the question at the age of 16 to himself, "Who am I?" And the answer came to him immediately. He got it immediately. I'm not that guy. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, the answer doesn't come to me immediately. So to answer your question, I think people will get what they get when they get it. You know what I mean? It's but I do think there's utility. No, of course, there's utility to like life experience. I was very ego driven. Like you say, if there's no God, no higher power, then then there can only be ego. Do you know what I mean? That's what the whole. I remember hearing the word rationale. The rationale holds the word ratio in, and the word ratio is the balance between the ego and the consciousness, and God,
Mm.
whatever. And so somebody who is a rational person is somebody that can take the ego and its craziness and can balance it and then be a rational person, you know.
Mm.
As somebody who is full ego is an irrational being. You know what I mean? And whereas somebody who is, full God is also irrational. So it's basically working in tandem with. And like for me growing up, it was all ego. There was no church, there was none of that kind of thing, no spiritual language, no understanding of that. So it was all ego, and I behaved irrationally because of it. I acted irrationally. And so over time, unfortunately and fortunately, because it was painful whilst you learn it, it's been like slapping a dog on the nose to say get down all the time. That's what my ego has been like, is I've tried, and I've tried, and I've tried, and it doesn't work. And so there is something to be said for age, that there's time to make your mistakes. Like I remember someone said to me, I know less now than I knew before. Do you know what I mean? And you're like, well, years ago, I'd be like, what are you talking about? You're mental. How's that possible? But the truth is, it's like you're better off knowing less. You're better off being the person who goes, maybe, maybe not, like the farmer thing. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? Maybe, and being the person who kind of lives within the question. So yeah.
As we're kind of thinking about bringing this conversation into land, we're swimming to the edge of the swimming pool. Are there any parts of your non-straight line journey that we've not explored that I think might be particularly inspirational or hope-filled? Or
No, I think that's kind of everything. That's kind of my whole story. I mean, I've shared more than I'll probably be fearful later on that I've shared too much. But
but it's you though.
yeah, no, it is true. It's you. But this is what I said at the beginning of the show, is when being a character. Being a character is something, but that's something to me that I've always done. I'm okay being a character on stage and stuff. But to let somebody in and to see you is something that is new for me over the past few years. And it takes courage to do that kind of thing. To let everybody, I think it takes more courage nowadays as well, because there's less understanding. There's more room for somebody to share something that people don't understand and jump on. And especially with, say, my situation with my daughters, which is unorthodox. I've had situations where people have just jumped on that, and because it's not an orthodox situation where you're not living in the same thing, I've been, some people have said some things to me, and you're like, believe me, my situation has not gone without pain, and without its own issues. And, so for me, I think that sort of closed me off. I think, but as my life is more sort of put together, and and I trust, like you say, I trust in something greater than me. I trust that everything will be all right, and that includes sharing the truth and being honest. But it doesn't mean that the ego won't get in later on and
Yeah.
be like, you know what though,
Well,
you know.
thanks so much for doing that. It's just been a joy to be on this journey with you in this conversation, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you more over the
Yeah,
months and years ahead.
yeah, and you're doing a production with Craig,
Yeah, doing with Mr. Shelton. Come on,
Mr. Shelton. Sorry, my apologies.
yeah, Medea at the Loft Theatre in Edmonton. That'll be long gone by the time this goes out. Yeah, he's a wonderful, wonderful director. I know exactly what you mean when you described how you felt around him as
Yeah,
a student.
he's a comforting. He allows you to be vulnerable. He allows you to be vulnerable. And I knew that at the age of, and I knew that at 9, 10. But like even now as a director, now it would be great to work with someone like Craig. He's intelligent, but he's also, you know, he's also somebody who you feel comfortable, and acting requires that. In order to act, well, it requires a level of comfortability, I think. Yeah.
Comfortability and vulnerability combined.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, one question I like to ask all my guests towards the end of the conversation is how can the listener and I help you the most right now, apart from buying tickets for Les Mis? Use it as an opportunity to put something out into the universe, just whatever. How can we help you the most right now?
How can you help me the most right now? Okay, apart from buy the tickets, you don't believe me. Cameron McIntosh doesn't need you to buy the tickets. I think he's like a billionaire now, which is that kind of thing. Maybe we should all be a little bit more like Mr. Shelton. You know what I mean? Just a bit more like, I tell you what, the listener and I could do it if you just go up to somebody. If somebody does something good, really praise it, especially if it's a child. Do you know what I mean? And that would be one thing. And the opposite thing would be never to assume that you know enough that somebody won't be able to do anything. Like when somebody told me that I couldn't be in Les Mis, because that really affected me.
Fuck them.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, it really affected me at the time.
If they could see me now. They could see me now.
Funnily enough, they've been in the audience. They were straight there in the audience. But yeah, and the idea of somebody, don't ever say anybody can't do anything, because we all have like unmeasurable amounts of power within us. So that would be it.
Thanks so much for that. The other question I'd like to ask is, whose non-straight line journey would you like to hear?
Non-straight line journey.
Yeah. So who are you going to tag as a guest that you think would appreciate this experience?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I did JCS with Julian Clary, and I thought that would be. I mean, he's an amazing guy. He's got amazing stories, and I wonder what he'd be like. But maybe potentially I'll tag him in and see whether he's.
And would you be able to introduce us? You working with him for?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. I mean, yes, I could.
Well, you can introduce us. Up to him whether he says yes or no.
Exactly. Well, I'll definitely be able to do that. That's no problem for a fellow Coventrian.
Yeah. Well, Ian, it just remains for me to say on behalf of this, and I thanks so much for being open, for being vulnerable, and for being quite comfortable in your sofa there. It must be.
I know. Yeah.
It's been great to share this with you. So thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of Not a Straight Line. If this conversation helped to reorient your internal compass or inspired you in any way, please let us know by heading to podcast.notastraightline.life/rate and leave a rating and review. Thanks as always to Matthew Bliss of MB Podcast Services for his exquisite engineering of this episode. If you'd like him to help you with your podcast, contact details are in the show notes. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, or there's someone whose non-straight line journey you'd just love to hear, then please visit podcast.notastraightline.life/guest. Thanks for being here with me, and I'll see you next week for another amazing, deep, inspiring non-straight line journey. Love you.